All right, so here we have the website edit, which is the second half of the website rendering, right? Where that you can navigate from a particular website in the list of websites, and then to the editor or the or being able to create a new website, right? And the pages look fairly similar, right? They have a list of pages. They have an editor of pages. Be able to create a new page. So I'm not gonna go over that. I'm sure this is plenty for you to be able to tackle the other two. So let's visit now being able to list the various widgets. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So let's create a directory here where we can play around with widgets. So let's do widget. And under here, we'll first tackle one of them, the widget list.html, and let's make sure that we can navigate here. So we'll do h1 widget list and see if we can navigate there. So we have this would be widget/widget list.html. Okay, so we're there. Right, we can navigate there. Very good. So the layout of this is that we're going to be rendering several pieces of content, different types of content, right? Some of them are going to be headings, some of them are going to be images, some of them iframes and whatnot. All right, so let's just go over some of them. Some of them are fairly trivial. Let's see. Let's go over some of them. So let's first put a border around. So container. Container. Why is this not? Oh, I don't have Bootstrap. I hate computers. Style sheet. href. Vendors. Bootstrap. This, CSS, oops, and then Bootstrap. Okay, there we go. All right, let's now continue. Let's see, and this would be container fluid. There we go. And in here we'll say we're going to start rendering a couple of these widgets. All right. So let's start off with the simplest of widgets, which is the heading widget. All right. So this might be h1. Right, and this is a heading of size 1. And you might have several of these, right, of different sizes, h1, h2, right, and this is of size 2. So let's render that. There we go. We have our very first widgets. Okay. What we typically like to be able to do is that these widgets, each one of these widgets would have an editor or a cog, right, that would allow us to either drag it around on the page, right, or when we click it, navigate to an editor that would allow us to change the properties of that particular widget. Yes? Okay. So we could do that. Well, we can achieve that by adding after each one of these, right, perhaps some layout, some content that would render those cogs, those links, those whatever, right? Now, since we're going to have lots of these types of widgets, right, and it's very typical that we're going to repeat a lot of the styling over and over, right? It probably might be a good idea to encapsulate each one of these contents in a semantic element, right, that we can treat it logically, right? So, for instance, this is the content of the widget, right? This is also the content of the widget, right? It's not the widget itself. The widget might include other things like the editor, right? Like the various other things, right? So what we're going to do is that we're going to encapsulate, right, the h1 in a div. That's going to allow us to, treat it and add some behavior for the content, right? One of the things that we'd like to be able to do, for instance, is have a separate, maybe like a heads-up display or tools bar, right? That will allow us to manipulate or drag or configure this. So let's create. Okay, so also it's also good practice to start naming these things, right? What is meant for this? So for instance, we might start giving a class, right, that gives it some description of what it is, right? So we'll say that this is a widget. It's a widget, right? And then from CSS we can come back and style that widget, right? Whatever we want to do, add some padding, some margins, some whatever we want to do, right? Now here I'm going to insist that if you create a class of your own, like here we have, right, that you should namespace your classes to make sure that they are indeed your classes, as opposed to somebody else's classes from some other library that you might be using, right? So for instance, we might use I don't know, webdev or something, right? WDV or something, some nomenclature that you know it's yours, or maybe it might be your initials, right? Something that is distinct, that you know these are not Bootstrap classes, these are not somebody else's classes. That's one of the things I don't that criticize on Bootstrap, that they don't namespace their classes, right? So you don't know if somebody write that, whose class is that, right? It would have been nice if if they would have added some well, maybe not BS, but some other namespace, right? That would be clear that this is Bootstrap classes, right? It would be distinct. So all right, so great. So that's a widget. We can maybe add above this. We could add maybe the toolbar, right? That would allow us to implement those elements, right? So for instance, you might have here the cog. Let's create the cog here. So we have maybe span class glyphicon, and this is glyphicon, maybe the cog here, and we want another glyphicon. I believe we want to like the striped, right, to denote that we can drag this around. So let's see. I don't remember what that is. So span class glyphicon. Glyphicon. I'm sorry? Hamburger. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Hamburger. Menu hamburger? Excellent. All right, let's see what that looks like. All right, so we have those two on the right there, right? One of them presumably means that we can edit it, and the other one presumably means that we can drag it around. Okay, and typically we'll probably want the same thing for each one of these, right? Same thing for the next heading, right? Something like that. Right, so each one is going to have it. Okay. All right. So but it looks like it's not quite styling the way we want it. Typically, we probably would want it that it renders on the right-hand side. So let's see. We could probably tell this that we want it to go all the way to the right-hand side. So pull right, maybe. Okay, so that just puts it all the way to the right. Let's see if we make it small. Probably not quite. Notice that is when it becomes small, it's like pushing the content, right? It's not flowing very, very well. So we might provide use some other technique. So instead of using this pull, well, let's remove that and let's try something else. So as you might have already been using, the browsers come now with very, very powerful tools that allow you to debug and see exactly what it is that it's being rendered and why. Right? So if you right-click and you inspect an item, it'll highlight it of where it is in the DOM. The DOM is the browser's interpretation of the ASCII HTML that was downloaded. Right? The browser downloads your ASCII, it parses it, and it creates a mental model, right, of what the page is. Right? It creates objects and instances in its RAM, right, and then it uses that document object model, right, to render the page. So this is its interpretation. So any errors you might have made, right, would not be here in the DOM, right? It would be this would be the sanitized or the its best guess at what you thought you were writing. So if you have a missing closing tag or some syntax error, here in the DOM you would see what the browser guessed at what you were trying to say, right? Its interpretation of the ASCII HTML. All right, so let's see. What we want to be able to do is style this div over here. So one of the things that we could do, let's see, we could here change the styling, and we can say maybe we can change its position. Maybe we can say that it's absolute. Okay, notice that it removed it from the rendering. Okay, it's no longer pushing down. It's no longer affecting the position of anything of its neighbors, right? Which is one of the things we wanted to accomplish, right? We don't want it to push down or make things wrap, right? The next thing is that we might want to, so it's all the way to the right-hand side, so we can say right 0 pixels so that it's now all the way to the right. Okay, so that looks promising. That's kind of what we wanted. Maybe we want it to push it a little bit to the left-hand side so that it's not flush with the content, right? So it looks a little prettier. Oftentimes it's useful to change maybe its background color so that you can see it, how it contrasts with everything else. So let's just change it just for debugging purposes. Let's change the background color to be maybe a beige, right? So something light, maybe not too light. I can't see that. So we'll go with gray. Okay, there it is. So that's gray. All right, so notice that our decisions to go with that right 7 actually doesn't look very good, right? Because probably we want the box to be flush with the content, with the edge of the browser, but what's inside of the box we want some padding, right? So let's remove the right, probably, or go back to 0. Okay, so it's flush, and instead add maybe some padding, right? So some padding. Maybe 3 pixels. Is that enough? Maybe that's enough, right? Maybe 3 pixels, or you can play around how big you want it, right? Plus, we might add some rounded corners. I believe the assignment draws it with some rounded corners, right? So you could do that as well. You can say border, and the border. Notice that it has a radius. See that border radius allows you to decide, how do you want the borders to have all around, okay? And we can say maybe 3 pixels, or you can make it very accentuated, and maybe that's way too much, or maybe this is a styling that you want, right? It depends on what it is that the designers asked of you, right? Now it looks like the designers only wanted the border radius to be only on the bottom left, right? So let's do that. Instead of this being border radius all of it, you have different options here. Notice that the radius has actually several options. It has a border radius. Notice it has a border top left radius. So we're looking for bottom left radius. Let's see, bottom left radius. Bottom left, there it is. Bottom left radius. We want. Well, maybe not 17, but somewhere in there, right? So maybe this is maybe 10 pixels. Okay. All right. So that's looking good. Once we're happy with the styling, we might want to make this permanent, right? If I refresh the page, this is all going to be lost, right? So instead of before I refresh the page, I'm just going to copy all this styling. I'll copy it, and if I refresh, notice that it's gone, right? So I'm going to go make it permanent. One way to make it permanent it's this one right here. This is the styling, right? This is the element with the hamburger and whatnot. One of the bad ways of doing it is to copy the styling right on the element, right? So we can paste it in there, and if we refresh, notice that it's indeed that styling. Maybe you can do it for temporary just to test it to see that indeed that is the styling you want, right? And you can refresh it and tweak it. But once you're happy with it, right, it should never be left here in the style, right? So instead, what we might want to do instead is to give this a class name, and say that this is JGA, maybe the toolbar, right? And then from a CSS file, right? Move all the styling on there. So let's go. I think we had a style.css, and here we can say I want the class JGA toolbar, right, to have the following transformation, and we're going to move all our transformation away from the style attribute. We're going to remove it because it should have never been there, and instead we're just going to paste it in there. Okay, now we're going to refresh, and it didn't work. What happened? I'm sorry? Oh, I never loaded CSS. Okay, yeah. See, I hate computers. They do everything so literal. They never do what I want them to do. They always do what I tell them to do. So let's see. So this is href. Go back up. CSS. I guess it's a good thing that the computers still do what they're told. All right, there it is. Okay, and then we can just apply that styling, right? JGA toolbar. We can just apply it to all the toolbars, right? We just paste it there, so that now all the toolbars are there, right? It might be that it works perfectly with headings, but not exactly with other types of elements. Let's try it out with other types of elements, such as images. So let's add now a widget for an image. So this might be div class JGA widget with the jet, and we probably want the toolbar here as well. And we're going to add the image. So here's img, and this is connected to some image. What image should we use? Let's use a lorem ipsum image service. So lorem ipsum image. Lorem pixel. There we go. So lorem pixel is the equivalent of lorem ipsum for images. And here is the URL. I can't see that. There it is. I'm just going to grab this, copy that, and I'm just going to paste here src, and that's the location of the image. So I'm asking for an image of that size, 400 by 200, randomly. Okay. So if I do that and I refresh this, it comes back with that random image, okay? Of which probably we'd like to make it. Okay, we just want to see that if we make this smaller, this still renders nicely on top of the image. Okay. For our purposes now, we're gonna, since we're targeting mobile first, we're going to go with the width 100% so that it becomes responsive. Right? It takes up the entire width of the phone. There it is. So that if I make it smaller, it resizes, right? It takes up the entire width of the phone. Everybody okay? All right. All right. So images work just fine. What about let's copy this, and let's now just plain old HTML. Right. So let's replace this. And have maybe a paragraph in here, and let's go fetch some HTML. Yes. This width over here. Sure, you could do that. So, for instance, if we might say that if it's a JGA widget, right, and there's an image in there, then we want the width to be 100%, right? Now. You might want to distinguish whether it's an image that you are using for painting something else, maybe a glyphicon or whatnot, and where this is the image in its actual content that you want to render, right? So we might want to say that this is the class here is maybe JGA content, actual widget content, right? And so we can remove this from here. Let's see. It's no longer 100%. So from the style, we could say if I have an image JGA content, would it make sense to style all content to have width 100%? Maybe not all content, right? Maybe we mean all content inside a widget, right? So to describe that rule, that this is an image content, right? That's inside of a widget. We can specify by putting in front of this using the spaces I mentioned earlier, right? You can say if you see a JJ widget, right, space, right, meaning somebody inside my hierarchy, any of my children that has this class, I want to apply that rule, right? And then it applies, right? Make sense? Awesome. All right. So how about content? Like, so let's go grab some HTML. Let's see if we can go. Maybe let's go to Gizmodo and grab some HTML from there. Wait, what? Latest Han Solo tweet is either his most revealing or best role. Okay, I'll read that later. So let's grab some HTML. Let's grab maybe this HTML here. We can inspect and look at the HTML. Wait a minute. I think it navigated. Oh no, the robots are coming. So let's inspect this. Right, and we can see the actual content. We can just copy this, and we should be able to paste it. Let's see. Paste it. Okay, there's the whole paragraph. And if we render, right, probably there we have the HTML down below. Okay, with all the styling, the anchors are still all there. Okay, and finally, perhaps we want to try out, putting in a video, right? So let's go to YouTube. And let's go maybe home. That's it. That's really what I have. Why is it still so? Okay. And let's grab my next boat. And so let's grab that boat and let's include this. And let's see, where is the embed? Share. Okay, thank you. And you can embed, right? And it generates for you some HTML that you can just copy and paste onto yours, right? So let's grab that. Okay, skip the end. Stop it. And so we can go here and just paste it in the widgets. Why is this? Okay, let me just copy that. Let's grab the previous widget, right? And let's replace the content so that it's just the iframe. And let's grab that and let's paste it in there, and let's see what it renders as. So there's our video, which is quite not, which is we might want to decide that the width for this, it goes all the way to the right hand side, right? Or we might style it to expand it. Now notice that if we make this smaller, the toolbar still renders on top of it, which is what we were looking for, right? But one of the things that I think was suggested as in the assignment is that this should be somewhat transparent, right, so that we could see the content behind it, right, when it's on top of it. So we can add some styling to this, right, and change this a little bit. So here's our toolbar, and we can change its opacity, right, so that one is total opaque, but you can set something that is a little bit less opaque, maybe 0.5 or 0.6 or 0.7, so that you can see through. Let's do it maybe here. This might make more sense. Let's see. That's opacity 0.7. Oops, 0.3. I don't really see anything behind it. Do you see anything behind? Huh? Oh, sorry. The toolbar. There we go. So this would be the opacity to be 0.3, so you can see a little bit through it, right? 5, right? And I'm not sure if I specify how much, but you can see a little bit through it, and so we can grab that and copy it back into the CSS for the toolbar, right? Also here, the toolbar. Notice that this name we chose here is somewhat vague, right? JGA toolbar. It could be that it might mean some other toolbar, right? Maybe a toolbar at the top, or maybe a toolbar on the right-hand side, right? So maybe my naming convention was wrong. Perhaps I want to add here, widget toolbar, okay? Or even better, maybe I want to preface it with somewhat of a higher context, saying this is a toolbar, but it's in the widget, or this is a toolbar, but on the sidebar, or this is a toolbar on the header, or things like that, right? So here classes allow you to kind of give meaning, right, of what the intent or what the role of content is, right? It allows you to, if you follow these naming conventions, right, it'll make it so much easier for everybody else to follow along what it is, right, and try to create a mental model on how the page is structured, right, and that it has, so that they don't have to read the content to try and figure out what it is if you give it a good naming convention, right, and it's used throughout your consistent. Make sense? All right, I think this is enough to get you going with this.